This is not a particular hot take, and this is probably something that we hear multiple times when people discuss social media. And I'm just here to remind you that everything that you see on social media is a curated file, is a curated profile of what people want you to see. Not everything is all sunshine and daisies, and you're starting to see it now. There are throwbacks coming out. There are times when people were working out, and times when you didn't have to isolate, when you didn't have to be struck down by this thing they call coronavirus. And the amount of people who are putting this stuff up, I'm just letting you know, the world isn't always sunshine and daisies, and it may even hit doubly hard because most of the times you have irregular bowel movement, and it is on that toilet that you are scrolling, seeing these different things of these different people. But you also have to consider that was also posted while these people were doing a similar thing to you. I think therefore I am, and we are all the same once again. Now, like I said, that isn't a hot take, but I'm just here to remind you. And that's just the way that we are. We're curated to feel like we need to fit in with other people. And this has nothing to do with the rest of the episode, but I just thought, while we were sitting here, while we're talking about it, I thought I'd have a little scroll through my Instagram and started to see what types of content people are putting out. And a lot of it is very superficial. And I think, that's not a critique of the people who are posting these things. A lot of us do like to share this sort of thing. But, we're aware, we see, and I think the more that we can accept it and the more that we can be compassionate to ourselves and just understand that, we're doing the best of what we can. That's all we can do. And I'm happy to be here. There's a lot going on, and I'd like to talk to you today about it, but let's get into it. Time to crank. So we've got a little bit to go through today. A few weeks ago on the Instagram, if you're not on the Instagram, definitely go follow it, Sick As Podcast, as always. If you're not on the Facebook group, so we have a Sick As Podcast private group, and in there is where I post a few things, so if you prefer to use Facebook over Instagram, or you can use Instagram. But on there, I also type some things up just about thoughts that I'm having. And what I'd like to do is create more of a community some more. So I do have people who reply to all the stories and all that, so we've got that sort of community going on, but to the point where I'm not facilitating that conversation anymore. Maybe it's just you're listening to this and as part of this, you start putting stuff up that you think will be relevant to other people because you're starting to understand the minds of the other people that listen to this sort of podcast. So a few weeks ago, I did a Q&A, not a Q&A, I did the questions, and now I'm going to be doing the answers. But also a couple of weeks ago, so I've had a really awesome guests on, and I've just been inundated with the amount of people who are wanting to have these conversations with myself, and I honestly am at that point where I'm starting to see conversations are psychedelic. Like I'm buzzing for so long afterwards, and then I do go through a come down period because I realize like the level or the frequency that I get up to when I actually start to have some of these conversations, and the kind of the interconnection between myself and everything that I bring plus everything that they bring, that little meeting point in that middle, that negotiation of how this conversation is going to go, a lot of that intellectual gymnastics and just being able to create an energy and feed off it and go forward with different things that you're not really ready. Sorry, you're not ready. You're ready, but you're not even sure you're going to explore, and then it ends up happening. That's gold. And I think because it is so chaotic, because you don't know how to prepare for it, the more that you can partake in those different things, the better you end up being in very uncomfortable situations, because there are a lot of things where you're putting a lot of yourself on the line. A lot of you comes to the forefront of your opinions and your ideas, and it's easy to tie yourself to that. And if someone ridicules that idea, or if someone doesn't agree with it, does it strike you as a person? Is it your ego that then takes the hit, or are you able to then see how you can interweave it into your DNA and be able to go forward from there? So I've been enjoying those conversations, but I've also been enjoying some of the back and forths that people have been trying to engage with on the old Instagram. And one of the most recent ones, and this is something I want to address now, has been the story that I was talking about myself at the supermarket. So what happened was, and I did an episode about this almost like maybe 6 months ago, where I was talking about my apprehension and kind of my anxieties when I go into different supermarkets because of being someone who has been picked out as a potential shoplifter. And I honestly do think it is because of my stature. It has nothing to do with anything else, because I'm not shiftier than anyone else. I don't come in smelling like any narcotics, any crack. I don't look like I have a mushroom above my head. There's just, I don't know, it's just a boy with tattoos, muscular, and looks like I'm probably trouble. And I've carried this with me, and I did I did an episode on racism, like even maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And in there, I talked about being followed around shops and being wrongly accused of different crimes that other people have committed, or being put in lineups for things, and I was not even in the area. So it happens. And what happened was, I was at Pack and Save. I won't say where, but I was at the supermarket, and I was walking around. I did my shopping, and then I went into, so now we have self checkout. Now self checkout, it's pretty it's just pretty much the machines are starting to take human jobs. And what you do there is you obviously scan your own stuff, pay your own stuff. But if you have your own bag, you can put your bag in the bagging area. And what happened was pretty standard protocol. You go there, you click own bag, you put your bag down, and then you start loading your groceries into it. What happened was, I unfolded my bag, so it was a very flat bag, like it was rolled up, and then I took my bag out, I unrolled it, then I put it on the platform, and then I clicked, this is my own bag. And everyone else was around me doing the same thing, like everyone else was doing this, and then we all had our groceries, and then the worker actually came over and checked in my bag just to make sure that there was nothing in there prior to me putting the rest of my groceries in. And it took me by surprise. Like, there was a lot of things that I went through in my head, just feeling really like, what the heck? Like, I felt angry, I felt sad that it happened. I started feeling like I wanted to say something. I started feeling like maybe he's just doing his job, but then I saw that he wasn't doing it to anyone else as well. Like, I didn't understand why it was me who was singled out. But then I obviously, in the back of my mind, kind of laughed it off a bit, because I'm just like, oh, it's so typical. It's so typical that was to happen. But the compassion that I had, and that was, something that everyone picked out, is that because I internalized all those emotions, I went through all those different emotions, and that at the end of it, compassion was my overall emotion. And people wanted to know, like, how the heck do you have something so vicious like that happen, or like understand that this is a volatile situation, and you're so chill about it? Like, I would have gone off, I would have called them out, I would have done all these different things, and I do feel like it's one of those things where you get home, you get in the shower, you start running through, like, I should have said this, I should have said that, and then you start crying a little bit, and then you start like, oh man, this has happened to me my whole life. And it is easy to start feeling like you're the problem, and you just need to get through it because you don't want to cause any troubles. And that's what follows you around. And the more you start to normalize it within yourself and believe that you are the problem, the more that sort of thing happens. And I think where I placed my attention was less on me, because, as I like to say a lot of the times, and I've never said this before, but where your attention goes, your energy flows. And where I started putting my attention was on the fact, of compassion. I started to understand that this man lives a very sad life. Like, it's sad that this is the view that he has of the world. It's sad that, like, I feel for him that he hasn't had the experiences or the proper nourishment of proper interconnections or creation of nice, just social bondage with people who can show him a different side of that world. It's sad that he hasn't had that exposure, and that this is the color. These are the only colors that he can paint his world with, and that he doesn't get the wider perspective, and he just has to assume that this is the way that this is the world is. And it's not particularly an individual fault. It's obviously everything that he's been exposed to as he was growing up. So that bit of compassion that I have, and I think I'm starting to explore it more and more, and it's because I have the compassion for myself. But also, the more that I think about compassion, the more I start thinking about multi dimensions, and this is where I'm going to lose a lot of you. But this is where I am coming from, and this is why I try to be as zen and less angry and less worked up about different things. And firstly, the first one is, if you do go mad at some things like that, you kind of prove a point to these people. But if you can be that person, everyone always says you be the bigger person, but I genuinely was just like, I feel bad for you, man. I'm so upset for you, because this is the life that you ended up living because you haven't had that exposure to other people, or you're just super ignorant, and that's a different story. But where I'm at is, if I just believe that everyone else could have been me, but the proper compassion that you do have is, instead of saying that could have been me, just say that they are you. in the Bible, even if you don't believe in it, it's love yourself, love thy neighbor like you love yourself. And it's not that you're going to, if I like treat them how I wanted to be treated, it's just like they are you. If you pretend that they are you and then they just had a different exposure all the way through life, that's how you could have ended up if you didn't have the luck of the exposure that you've had, depending on where you are. Now, I'm extremely lucky that I have the cultural richness in terms of my upbringing, and this person just doesn't get to experience that. So I think that the way that you can start to see other people as yourself, they are versions of yourself who just, they moved 1 degree. If you think about someone who is living in multiple realms and they are living the same life that you do, but they make slight adjustments. Every single time you do an action, they're making the smallest change. So they've achieved everything you have, but they're making small changes every single day. They will end up on a very, very different path. And some people in that time, they miss out on the kick that they should have got, so they stop playing a sport. Like the ramifications, the ripple effect of everything that you are part of comes into all of this. And this is something that I've been doing as part of my journey and starting to understand how I relate with other people. So that sounds very esoteric and just out there, but this is to the point where the more compassion you can have for yourself and the more compassion you have for other people, the more you start to realize that just being kind is probably going to be some of the best medicine. And I think during this, I do understand that these people need to be called out, and they will get what's coming to them. There will be a time where someone isn't as compassionate and actually, takes what's it called? They take offense to it, and then they do blow off at the guy. Now that kind of, like I said in my last anger episode, is just that the more angry you are towards a situation, the social justice that you could get from it is actually it's ignored because you're seen as an angry person. But at the same time, when I was getting messages from different people, I had so many messages come back to me, people saying sorry that you had to go through that. It's something that I'd never have to go through. We have people who wrote in about their own experiences of being followed around. And a lot of you were talking about, you have to go through those internal, those emotions just multiple times in your head because you're like, am I the problem? And then you start thinking I'm mad. And then you start thinking of alternate scenarios where you should have done this, should have done that. But at the end of the day, you've all been very similar where you're just like, I feel bad for that person, that this is the way that they view the world. But then I also had quite a few people who, and I'm not criticizing the way that you would have handled it, but it is to call out people. And I understand that seems like the right thing to do. And as someone I interviewed someone I interviewed frequently, fuck, that's the second word that I got wrong. Someone I interviewed recently, which means close to time-wise, yes, recently just said, we call in those people. And I do see that as a definite way of going about it. The only thing is there's consequences. It's so much easier if you are an ally to be able to do that sort of thing, because when the consequences come back, it doesn't reflect on you. You can easily jump away if you need to, right? This is my color. This is how I look every day. I can't just take the suit off when it doesn't suit me anymore. This is just how I am. So I've been conditioned for a very long time not to speak out about this sort of stuff because, I can't hide from this. So I'm sorry, I know you came at me almost like I was the issue for not bringing it up, but this is what happens to me. It would be easy. I would love to be able to have that confidence to be able to have that discussion, but there are so many consequences for people who look like me, who try to bring that sort of stuff up. And I'm not very good at confrontation. It's something I should get better at, but I believe the compassion that I had, firstly, is probably the best way to go, just for now, because like I said, I can't step away from this. This is how I look, and this is my everyday, which now thinking about the self-care space and thinking about all that sort of stuff, it's very Eurocentric, and, to be able to do all these different things, like I have touched on before, with the reflections that you can have, all of this is very privileged to be able to do this, because some of us just can't operate daily without having that overbearing burden that you need to speak a certain way, you need to act a certain way so that you aren't discriminated against. I would love to not have anxiety of those different things. I would love to only focus on an awkward interaction that I had with someone because I'm introverted. But I didn't ever consider, a lot of people who focus on these anxieties and focus on these different things, it's not because you have to change who you are so that, you can fit into a place without being accused of robbing or of being a thief. It's so that you can go into different places and feel comfortable with who you are and not having to change that. We know that identity plays a huge part in belonging, and we know that belonging has a huge part in your overall well-being. The more that you know yourself, the more that you can handle discrimination. But sometimes you don't want to know yourself, and sometimes you don't want to accept that part of yourself because society sees you as these different things, as someone who's a thief, as someone who is aggressive, as someone who doesn't have morals and anything like that. So the more I think about the self-care space, the more I just say fuck a lot of it, because it is very privileged. It is very like, I just want to do these meals. I just want to, look after myself in these different ways. But, something about our daily life as a brown person, as someone who has tattoos, as someone who looks the way that I do, and is very proud of it, we've got a few extra steps that we have to take. To actually be able to take all that on. So how am I meant to focus on meditation and taking all this time out when I can't even go anywhere, or I can't go to some places without being stereotyped? So that went longer, but I think that's something that I'm going to have a bit more of a think about, because a lot of you did have very, very awesome dialogue when it came around that sort of stuff. And all we can do for now is just be the best that we can be, and hopefully keep changing the ideas. And I think over time, if we think about this as a very, very insidious kind of creeping in of the norm, eventually, I just burped a little bit, sorry. Eventually, this will be in a place where we can be okay. But anyway, I'm now going to move to the Q&A section. And the reason why I wanted to put this Q&A section in was just to remind you that, yes, we have all of these big things that I'm thinking about regularly, but at the same time, you want to see where my mind's at. You want to see what I feel about different things and how I view the world a little bit. So we might go a little bit long, and I'll just touch on these a little bit. If there's anything that you want me to continue talking about, please write in. But the first question that we had: what is a conspiracy theory that I actually believe in? Now, conspiracy theories, firstly, let me just say this, right? It's hard now to talk about conspiracy theories without people thinking you're some QAnon person, or someone that's like aligning with the right, or someone who is just such a bad person. Like it's a bad thing to be involved with conspiracy theories. I find them quite interesting. Like I am just one of those people who like, that's quite interesting how you can get that from that. It doesn't necessarily mean that I believe in them. It's just like, that's a very interesting way of thinking about things. And I think when we talk about conspiracy theories, we need to move more away from like the very out there sort of ideas, because the conspiracy theories, I think, I was talking with a mate earlier, and they were saying that a lot of that word kind of came around, with the JFK assassination, and all of the different theories that came around, they call them conspiracy theories. And if you could slap that onto something, then you never have to believe it as real. It's like you just put this on, and it's like you call that person witch, you go burn them, and then everything that they talk about after that point, they're discredited because they are a conspiracy theorist. But conspiracy theories, like if you think, actually, it's anyone who's going to use that power to kind of control some sort of narrative. Now, if you think recently, a lot of it has been gas prices. Like, it's not that they're doing these rituals. Like, every time we think conspiracy theories, we think, burn the goat, sacrifice a virgin, all that sort of stuff. But, like, the ritual could just be, I'm putting on my suit to go to work, to then control this sort of thing that we're talking about here, like the gas prices going up, and the rituals that people use their power, like I said, and their greed to make more money or to gain more power. All right, so beyond that, we're probably thinking secret societies. And do I know anyone in a secret society? If I did, they're not really doing a good job of being in a secret society, because now I know. But a lot of that stuff, a lot of the the secret societies that do kind of occur or that do exist, a lot of that is just because we are connected people, and we are people who like to surround ourselves with people who have the same kind of values as us, or the same outlooks in the world, or the same kind of drive towards some sort of change. Some people also have these secret societies where it's just so upper class, and it's gated by a sense of wealth, so you actually have to pay membership fees, and that's why I will never ever know about these people in these secret societies. But let's move along from that, and that's just to, like, when we talk about conspiracy theories, that's kind of where we're at. But I think anything's a conspiracy theory, and it's really, really cool to think about. If we take conspiracy theory and we think less about the people at the top end, putting on these weird robes and stuff, and then burning something. But just like I said, the rituals could be anything. Could be someone going to work to carry out some sort of thing that's going to change something over a long period of time. Except no one knows who's actually the governing body for all of this. So who's actually in control of it? Conspiracy theory that I actually believe in. I don't think that I do believe in it, but I really want to believe in it, and that's extraterrestrials. That is aliens. Aliens, the UFOs. I used to watch a lot of documentaries on this, and I used to, they do question a lot of things, like a lot of things that you're just like, wow, this was hundreds of thousands of years ago, and somehow they managed to do that without the technology that we have now. Like, we couldn't even do that now with the technology that we have now. So there's that, and I also look at some people who have really changed the course of evolution, of science, of all that sort of stuff, because they're people who are just bandwidths ahead of everyone else. And how I'd like to think about it is that we actually have extraterrestrials who are looking after us. They're looking after the country. We're a big science experiment for them, or, we're just like pets. We're just like, we have pets and we give them stuff when they need it, but we just let them do what they do during the day, right? Aliens could be doing that with us. And then every now and then they drop in a little friend, Elon Musk, Albert Einstein, people like that. Descartes, I think Descartes invented science, but he speaks French. So those sorts of things, right? People who are just light years ahead, but they also end up transcending what we can do as human beings. And then every now and then, throw a few spanners in the works. And why I think there are these small sightings is either two things. So this is where the conspiracy comes into it. It's either one, people already know that UFOs and aliens exist, right? And they're just hiding it from people. So what they're doing is they're just giving small glimpses every now and then, so that when we do end up finding out about these aliens, so whoever's at the top, and I talked about this before, the intergalactic community of elders, the people who are dealing with those people, so the people who from Earth are the Earth delegates who get to talk to the who are part of, I guess they are chair members of the intergalactic community of the elders. They will talk with them, and then they'll slowly start to release things over time to make sure that when we do make contact, when they do make, they're slowly revealed to the rest of the country, to the rest of the planet, we won't just get a shock. We'll just be like, oh, we knew it. So they're slowly phasing it in, but also they're doing it in a way where no one gets to get the advantage of being able to meet them earlier, because we know that their technology and everything will be far more superior, and we just know that they are probably, or we'd like to hope that they are just earth-loving people, and they're all about peace and prosperity, and they just want us to be fine, but at the same time, they don't want anyone to, and take advantage of the fact that they have awesome technology. There's either that one, or number two is the possibility that they have made up this thing called extraterrestrials, and they're scaring us by showing these different things, so that and it's a distraction. So when something happens, boom, UFO sighting, we all focus on the UFO because we want it to be real so bad, or maybe just me, that we will focus a lot of attention into that while something else goes on. And we've talked about opiate of the masses, which is sport. So we use sport. We're all tuned into this one game, and we think that this means the world, but other things are going on, and we're kind of distracted by that thing, by that opiate. That's a very Karl Marx sort of saying there. But when we show, so maybe they made up this thing called aliens, and then when we finally see that these aliens are real, that then they will control the planet. So because I am an alien, this is how powerful I am, this is what I can do, and then someone controls the alien. And that's the problem with controlling, and that's the problem with putting people at the top in some sort of capitalist society, is that there's always going to be someone who wants to control the narrative, and if they can control it through a big thing that apparently has the all-knowing power, then it's all on. And this is why if I could interview anyone, I would probably interview Obama. And not for political things or anything, but it's just, I know that there is probably a time when you go into presidency that they give you, that I say, all right, listen here. These are all the things that we know that we can't tell you. But our intelligence, no, we know that we can tell you, but you have to keep this for the rest of your life. And I think in that would be aliens and what they're doing in Roswell or Area 51. So that's my first one. What is something that I believe in? aliens. And I just think, like, if you don't, and you really do only think that there's life on Earth, and there's no other there's no other dimension, there's no other planet that's going to have some sort of, it's just so vast. And I just think it's a very self-centered way of thinking if you don't believe that there's anything else out there. But yeah, I might have just gone way too far. Oh, this is another thing. Nikola Tesla, if you think about all the people who have had some sort of visionary discussion, absolutely just like revolutionary, what do you call it? When you find something, evolutionary discovery of the world, most of them were asleep, or most of them came up with this in a dream or a vision. They just had it come to them. Don't you think? I think someone's channeling them. Sleep on that for a little bit. All right, have a little think about that. All right, so the next one. What is your dream date? Oh, that's a nice one. I'm very super simple. I'm super simple, and like I said before, I prefer to be alone than I do with people. But when I'm with the right people, my dream date is really, really basic. On a few levels. My first one is just that, like, I want to be able to feel like I can be myself, and what I'm not is someone who dresses up fancy and someone who doesn't really understand the ethics or the etiquette of high-end places. I've never been a person with money, so when I was growing up, a lot of the places that we went to was either you take the food out or you'd go in, and it was like family sort of things, like where you had the Lazy Susan in the middle and your whole family's there. But I think if I was to go on a dream date, it would be, let's say, like, I just get really anxious going to new places, and I also don't want to put a burden on the other person to feel like they have to do the same thing as well. So maybe, like, I'll just, grab a bit of food, go to a place with a nice view, go for a little bit of a walk, and just, like, sit and have a picnic. That would be a dream date. Or, like, yeah, and then after that, maybe go watch a movie at the movies, or, go back to a couch place where you can watch a movie. But I think for me, it is a lot about comfort and feeling like I can be myself. And I don't feel like I can be myself in a lot of these fancy areas that people think is a dream date. But yeah, I think that's the easiest way to answer that one. And that's more just because I don't want to put too much pressure on that other person to feel like they have to go through things to impress me. But at the same time, like, I just want to feel comfortable so that I can actually be myself. And when you're on a date or when you're getting to know people, like, I think it's way cooler when you start to see, like, someone actually be themselves, where they're not putting on a facade so that they can try to impress you, and they just be who they are. So that, I don't know if that answers that question well, but that's literally it. I think, like, a picnic on with some nice scenery and some sort of physical activity in there as well. Like, obviously not doing 42 burpees or anything, but just a little bit of a stroll, nice view, and then just, like, chatting about some really cool stuff, though, like figuring out kind of how they align in terms of, I don't know, different things, like reflections. Reflections are really cool, and the more that you do that, I think it sets you up for creating a really good friendship as well. So yeah, cool, nice. What makes a good teacher, and do you think school sets people up for uni? Something I've spoken about on this in terms of the teachers, and one of my best teachers and the only teacher that I really remember is Carl Connolly, and I've talked about him a bajillion times. And I wanted to be like him as opposed to, him being a role model. So I wanted to be a PE teacher because of him. I studied PE because of him. And what he did was he really took an interest in me as an individual, and he really wanted what was best for me. And he would, put in extra time to check in on how I was, but also he had really good banter with me as well. So all of the, I think a lot of the teachers who I had that I thought were really, really awesome, the first thing that they did is they gave a lot of time. They knew who I was. They knew what I was interested in. And they were, they were relatable in the way that they would, try to deliver their kind of content. A big one as well was having external or things that were outside of the classroom that they would, pique my interest, and they knew I was interested in it, and then they would, say, hey, have you been interested in this? Have you been interested in this? And I think that kind of, that freedom a little bit when I was at high school with these different teachers, to explore a little bit, and they kind of would change some of the assessments for me so that it would be more aligned with the types of things that I wanted to learn. I think that was awesome, and that's probably something that a lot of teachers don't get enough credit for, is that the curriculum can be very, very broad, and how it's taught and the methods that you use can actually differ quite vastly from teacher to teacher. So there's that aspect as well, and I think the best teachers that I had were the ones who saw what I was good at and saw what I was capable of, and they knew how to challenge me a little bit. So they gave me that little bit of freedom to be able to explore, but at the same time, they made sure that I was getting my credits across the way. So definitely Kyle Condolif and his methods to be able to do that. Do I think high school sets kids up for uni? To be honest, I don't think anything sets people up for uni. It's more an individual thing. That's okay. Let me unpack that, because that was a very big statement, and if the wrong people get that in their hands, they'll just cut it, and then I'm gone. But my school, the school that I went to, was a very, how do you say it? It's one of those schools that if you wanted to do well, you would do well, and it's basically because no one would chase you up, and I think this is why my school worked really well, because it was very similar to uni, where no one would chase you up. If you weren't doing your work, oh well, that's your fault. And you did have disciplinary action, but a lot of it was you started taking self-responsibility for your own learning. And we had teachers and we had people who could teach the content, but at the same time, like if you wanted to excel, that was on you to show up, and that was on you to do the additional work. That's, I think, the biggest thing that can prepare people for uni, is the fact that you're not spoon-fed when you get here, and it is all on you, being able to create routines. And I know that a lot of our time that we spent at school was actually learning how to set up life routines, especially for us who had sport as well. Like, you have so much going on, and then I ended up getting a job, doing drama, doing additional stuff. So my time and it's more the extracurricular stuff that I signed up for is actually what taught me the strict regimen of being able to be, onto it with everything that I did. So I think in a way, for sure, it's really just dependent on the person, dependent on the school. Like, we can't just say high school sets people up for uni, because every school is going to be slightly different. But I think from my experience, that's how I was set up very, very well. But I do know other people on the other end who, maybe were docks, they were all Tongans. They were ducks of the school and just bombed out and just didn't do well at university. And it's just a different learning style, and different people who want you to do well. So that's that question there. Did you have the fish or the steak? That's my sister. Airplane is one of the greatest and funniest movies of all time. Most people won't like it, but yes, I had lasagna. Cool. What are your thoughts on skateboarding being in the Olympics, but boxing and weightlifting not? All right. So this to answer this question, I think, so we'll just understand that. So boxing and weightlifting were kind of staple sports of the Olympics since the early days, like the original Olympic Games, like prowess and just showing physical talent. The 2023 boxing and weightlifting has been dropped, and they're going to reassess whether in 2028 at LA will it come back into the scheme of things. Now, I don't think it has anything to do with skateboarding itself. Like, there's not it's because this is a sport or this is a sport. The more that I read into it, and the IOC statement on it was just that there is too many people popping positive for doping scandals in the boxing and weightlifting realms. Now, that's been prevalent. It's been highly prevalent, and I think this comes down to the original founder, Pierre de Coubertin. His whole thing was that the Olympics was going to be apolitical, but it was also going to be where people could we all come together, and it's this huge place of unity. The more that people dope and the more that people know of doping, it kind of takes away that apolitical stance. And boxing as a federation and weightlifting as a federation, they are their own sports as well. So until they get that right, will they reassess and actually see where it comes in. So I don't think it has anything to do with skateboarding being more of a sport than boxing or weightlifting. And it is something that we've known for a long period of time, that there has been systematic doping in those particular sports. The only problem is now in the sports, for the countries that were definitely not doping, but it's hard to be like, oh, but not all of us, because there could be times where someone from your country did or tested well. But now, I guess, for countries like the Philippines, for example, for boxing, that's where a bulk of their golds will come from. Now they lose that opportunity, and maybe for like some of the Eastern Bloc countries who are very, very good at weightlifting, will probably lose a bunch of those as well. So what do I think? I truly believe that boxing and weightlifting have their ultimate they need to be in the Olympics because they are, some of the original sports. But also, it does come down to fairness. And what is fair? We could just say everyone dopes and it doesn't matter. But there's rules. We have rules now. We have regulations, and we could argue about this until the cows come home. But yeah, I think that's where it stands, and that's a very good point. But I'm actually stoked that skateboarding is an Olympic sport now. I was a skateboarder, a competitive skateboarder for a while, and I it was never taken seriously, and it was never seen as something that could get you anywhere. But some of the top skateboarders in the world, they make bank. They make absolute bank, and they go on these circuits, and they make a lot of money, and they also get a lot of, and now that you can go to the Olympics, maybe, people will start taking that a little bit more seriously. So I should really have thought my way through that a little bit, but I think if you're living by, if we're trying to make sure that we're keeping it clean, or as clean as possible, that does come down to if it is a doping scandal, or if it is because of too many people testing positive for doping, then that is a sport problem, and probably something that needs to be rectified before we can even think about including it back into the Olympic Games. I guess they're just making a stance to say we won't have any of that here, and unless you want to be here. But yeah, I do feel for the people that miss out because of that. That's a long cycle with not being able to come back to the Olympics because your sport is gone, but we'll see what happens from there. Right, I keep coughing. Okay, last question here. Oh no, sorry, last two questions. What is something you wish you could tell your younger self? Learn to love yourself, man. Just really learn to accept yourself, and just be happy with who you are. My big one, I think, though, the thing that I did a lot of time with counseling is just knowing that my parents did the best that they could. They were just doing what was modeled to them. And by the stories that I've heard, they've actually done better than what was modeled with them, in terms of how they were brought up, and in terms of how they were shown love, and their ability to show me the love that they did, considering how they were grown up. I think they did the best that I could. And there are times that I'm going to wish that they showed me love in a particular way, but they just didn't have the tools to be able to show me that love. They were showing me love, but they just weren't showing it how I thought I needed to receive that love. So I think that's the biggest one, and it's really just like, yeah, this will, if you figure out that a lot of the things that you feel like they need to apologize for, they never knew that they needed to apologize for it, and you waiting for that apology without ever bringing it up and just expecting that it was going to happen, that's something that I wish I could have confronted or had conversations with my parents earlier. But additionally, I believe that if I had just understood that they really did give everything that they could, and they did the best that they could in that moment, I wouldn't have had that 10-year period of my life of just feeling like I was neglected, or feeling like I was never good enough. And just the more I accept myself, and if I told myself back then, just learn how to love yourself, I wouldn't have put myself into so many crazy positions, or so many kind of crazy, seeing all these things as cool opportunities to finally maybe if I get this, maybe if I make this amount of money, maybe if I get this PhD, maybe if I achieve all these different things, I will actually be accepted. But if I ignored all of that stuff and just learned how to love myself, I think that's what I would tell myself. It's just, you are enough, and properly enough as well. And you don't have to do any additional stuff. Just you existing and wanting to make the world a better place is enough. And I think that's what I would tell myself. And that's what I tell myself every day. And that's part of my compassion. That's part of my compassion to the world, as well as my compassion to myself. And then the final question is, if you could, top 3 guests. Top 3 guests is hard, because there's really cool people who are out there who do a lot of interviews, and they've already got a lot of interviews. But what I like doing is interviewing people who haven't necessarily, don't really get that exposure, but everyone does cool things. Every single person that I have spoken to, they start off by saying, I don't really do much. And then you talk to them about what they actually do. Holy crap, where do you get the time? So, but I do know, top of mind, and someone I've been trying to contact for a while, is the head down here in Dunedin. There's the Hare Krishna group, and they just jump around, and sing Hare Krishna, and he's just got a really cool energy, and I want to talk to him about that as well. I am lining up and then on another wave of spirituality, there's also Korohata here, Hata Temo. He's our university kaumatua. He's actually agreed to do it, so hopefully we can get him on as well. And then anyone who's just an avid hunter, so someone who loves hunting as well. Korohata does, but someone who goes out and spends most of their time hunting would also be awesome. I just kind of want to learn a little bit about that as well. And then anyone who's really interested into in conspiracy theories and just being able to talk. And I just feel like, I think philosophically, I want to explore my mind a little bit more. I'm not talking about taking substances or anything, but yeah, just being able to do all that sort of stuff. So really long episode today. Really thankful for the questions that came in. I'm sorry if this was not what you expected, and I know it's a little bit lighter, but I hope you take something away. I hope you learn a little bit of something. And yeah, I just love you all, and I think if you can share this episode, if you can share any of the episodes that you have liked, we have been rolling over thousands in the last couple of weeks, and it's been crazy. Like I don't know where all these people are coming from, but it's really nice to have you here, and I'm glad you tuned in today, and I want you to have a really great week. Have great energy. Love you all. And yeah, I'll catch in with you next week when I have a chat with my boy Mitch Kelly, who is an MMA fighter, and I know you'll really enjoy that. So yeah, have a good week.